everybody. It is Tuesday, June 29th, 2021. And so naturally, that means it's time for another segment of Toolbox Tuesday. And today is our last segment that is dedicated specifically to issues around sexual orientation, gender, affectual orientation, and issues like that. So as you might remember, if you've been following this month's segment, these Toolbox Tuesdays are meant for people who work with, who treat, or who provide counseling or services for people who are lesbian, gay, bisexual, transgender, queer, questioning, or intersex, or any of the other letters that have come to be associated with issues associated with pride. Today, I'm specifically going to be talking about issues related to being an ally. So for those of you who are counselors and therapists and service providers who are cis-sexual, cisgendered, meaning you identify with your gender, you identify with your sexual orientation, it's heteronormative, you are not made to have to justify or depathologize who you are, right? You are a male, you identify as a male, and you're happy with that. You are a female, and you identify with a female, and you're happy with that. And you are also straight. That's what I mean by cisgender and cissexual. So if you are one of those types of folks, and you are having a desire to be an ally, if you are having a desire to work with these populations in a very sincere and authentic manner, you're gonna have to know a lot. You're gonna have to understand a lot, and you're gonna have to understand most specifically when you gotta be quiet and listen up. There was an old counselor that I used to work with when I was an intern. And this counselor used to say, there are times when you have to get the cotton out your ears and stick it in your mouth. So for those of you who are cis, this is one of those times, because I'm about to talk to you very specifically, very candidly, and very honestly about exactly what it takes to be an ally, to be a good ally, and some of the ways that we as queer people, we as people of color, we as marginalized or disenfranchised people know when you're on your bullshit. How we know when you are not being an authentic ally. How we know when you are not here to serve legitimately. So before we get into any of that, I do want to talk to you about a researcher by the name of K.E. Edwards. So a few years ago, definitely in the 2000s, they came up with a 3-stage model for ally identity. And their model consisted of allies for self-interest, allies for altruism, and allies for social justice. And there was a demarcation of how each of these types of allies functioned, or how they practiced, or what they believed. So first, allies for self-interest were people who advocated for LGBTQIA+ issues because they had a direct relationship, or there was a direct impact on their lives for this issue. So an ally for self-interest is someone who becomes an ally because their brother, their sister, their cousin, their nephew, their niece, their child has decided to come out and become open about their sexual, gender, or affectional orientation. And so upon noticing that life has changed for them and that they are now subjected to various forms of violence and abuses, they become an ally and now advocate for equity or equality, or they advocate to diminish those issues that people who are queer, big Q queer, face. Allies for self-interest are not at a place where they're able to recognize the various ways that they participate in the ongoing activities that disenfranchise people of color, people who are queer, or people who have some other kind of marginalized identity. Right, so
who was that?
I'm gonna need you to get away from me. Who the fuck are you?
Oh, my
I don't
bad.
even know you.
I don't even
know
you look
you.
just like my cuz, my back. I apologize.
All right, go ahead. Have a nice day. Take it easy. All right. I'm working right now. I'm trying to put this on my website. Kind of interrupting me.
Sure. All right, well,
See?
good dude in my eyes. He a good dude, you know. Hey, know what the fuck going on?
Take it easy, all right?
You got it.
Allies for altruism. These are people who are allies or become allies or developed into an ally for the sake of liberating people from things that hurt them, just because people don't need to be hurting. Just because the things that are happening are unfair, unnecessary, unjust, and because it's the right thing to do. Again, just as with allies for self-interest, allies for altruism are also not ready to recognize the roles that they play in perpetuating or continuing the practices, the beliefs, and the institutional policies that continue to keep queer people, people of color, or marginalized or disenfranchised people in that role. So in this place, when we're talking about allies, this lesson right here is relevant for every identity that is not a part of the majority, right? So women, females, people of color, Latinos, Latinx, black people, African Americans, people who are from the Middle East, non-white people in this dominant society. If you want to be an ally for these people, Allies for Social Justice is the one that really makes the most difference, is the one that really goes the farthest way for mitigating these situations and circumstances. So Allies for Social Justice are the people who advocate for a better way, fight for a better way, and actively utilize their privilege to lessen the burden for other people. You cannot be an ally for social justice if you are not at a place where you are ready to recognize how you actively participate in systems of oppression and how you actively participate in keeping the people that you'd like to defend down and oppressed. So if you are a part of the majority, part of the work that you have to do is to understand how you benefit from the oppression of queer people. How do you benefit from the oppression of people who are transgender? How do you benefit from the oppression of people who are gay or lesbian or bisexual? If you are white, how do you benefit from the oppression of people of color who are black, Latinx, Arab, any form of color, Asian, any of that? How do you benefit when the media showcases another individual who's created a mass murder on these populations, right? So you have to remember as allies that the thing that is at risk for us the most is our very lives. People go into bars and shoot us. People go into churches and demolish us. People go into restaurants and hurt us just because of who we are. So you cannot understand that. You can empathize with the fear, certainly. You can empathize with the trauma, certainly. You can empathize with the uncertainty. You can empathize with the anger. However, you cannot know what it's like to be who we are from one moment to the next. So if you're going to be a complete and total ally, you have to recognize how you participate in these things, and you have to recognize whether or not you're actually willing to give up participating in these things, because that is the other aspect of the work. People who are a part of the norm, people who are a part of the gender and sexual and affectional orientation and are normative, are not at risk for these things. And giving up that privilege is a very scary thing, because a lot of times folks don't understand exactly how far privilege gets them. Privilege gets you far in work, it gets you far in relationships, it gets you far in healthcare. Super duper important. Are you willing to give up access to these privileges so that other people who are marginalized and disenfranchised, people who are projected upon to be, sometimes subhuman, Are you willing to give up your privileges so that we all can be equitable and equal? That's a hard-ass question. And we know, queers know, people of color know, disenfranchised people know when our quote-unquote allies are actually at that place. We can tell in the way that you talk to us. We can tell at the way that you try to reconcile with us. We can tell in the ways that you listen to us when we talk to you about our grievances. First thing is first, if you are a person who's from a normative or a franchised population, if you are from a majority group and you're the kind of person who chastises a disenfranchised person for the way that they speak, the way that they express themselves, or the way that they make you aware of what their grievance is or what their pain is, you might not be ready to be the most effective ally. You actually might not be the ally that you think you are. It's a tough pill to swallow, but you, as a person who has as much privilege as you have, me as a person who has as much privilege as I have, as a queer person, I have to be aware of how I manage this and how I wield this so that I can be a better ally for queer people who do not have as much privilege as me. That is something that continues all the way down the line, all the way down the privilege line. If you are a top privilege haver, if you are not trickling that privilege down to help enfranchise or lift up people who are struggling and suffering needlessly, then you are not behaving as a proper ally. Me, as someone who has a privilege, several privileges, right? I have a kind of privilege that allows me to pass as potentially heteronormative if I decided that's what I wanted to do. So how can I use that privilege to look out for people who have no desire or who choose to resist heteronormativity in that way? How do I give them that privilege to make sure that they are safe, that their needs are met, that they have access to medication and healthcare, that they have access to water and food, that their housing is not in jeopardy? That when something bad happens to them, that they can expect justice just like the rest of us. What are you as an ally doing to make sure that the people who are quote unquote minority are taken care of? If you don't have an actual, tangible answer for that question, you are not an ally who is functioning at the best, most possible capacity. You gotta do better. If you are someone who is not putting an end to treacherous, harmful, or abusive language in circles of other people who are a part of the majority, you are not functioning as a full ally. You are not being fully helpful. If you are not addressing disparities and disenfranchisement in every circle that you are a part of, you are not an ally for social justice. Ideally, everyone will eventually arrive at that place. However, I don't necessarily know that that is possible in a single lifetime. So if you are someone who has been able to recognize whether or not you are an ally for self-interest or an ally for altruism, do you have a desire to be an ally for social justice? And if you do, what steps do you have to take in order to rise to that occasion? If you have any questions, you can absolutely reach out to me. And until next time, take it easy, take care of yourself, self-care, love, all that, happy Pride.